Britain's Suez, America's Hormuz. History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. For centuries, the recipe for a global superpower was simple: rule the waves, and you rule the world. But every empire faces a paradox. The very infrastructure that allows them to project power globally, the trade routes, the straits, the canals, eventually become their fatal vulnerability. In 1956, Great Britain, the empire on which the sun never set, had its bluff called at the Suez Canal. It was a humiliating moment of imperial unveiling. It didn't cause the empire's fall, but it declared it to the world. It was the end of British independent global projection. Today, the world's reigning superpower, the United States, faces a symmetric challenge in the Strait of Hormuz. Like Suez, it is a 21-mile-wide choke point responsible for a staggering amount of the world's energy wealth. Like Suez, the challenge comes from a regional actor that the superpower should be able to crush, but cannot. Today, on World Update, we're decoding a historical pattern. We will explore how these narrow waterways become the graveyards of imperial ambition and ask the critical question: is America's stand in the Persian Gulf its own Suez Moment? And if it is, what comes next? Act 1. The British Template. To understand the pattern, we have to travel back to 1956. Post-war Britain was in decline, but still saw itself as a prime global power. The Suez Canal was its jugular vein, the shortest route to its oil interests in the Persian Gulf and its colonies in Asia. Enter Gamal Abdel Nasser, a charismatic Egyptian nationalist who, in July 1956, did the unthinkable. He nationalized the Suez Canal Company, snatching control from the British and French shareholders. This was an existential threat to British prestige. Prime Minister Anthony Eden saw Nasser as a new Hitler who had to be stopped. Britain, colluding with France and Israel, launched a military invasion. Militarily, the operation was a success. They seized control of the Canal Zone. But geopolitically, it was a catastrophic miscalculation. The 1956 world was no longer managed from London. The new masters were Washington and Moscow, and neither approved. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, furious that a key NATO ally had launched a colonial war during a U.S. election year without telling him, issued a brutal ultimatum. The U.S. didn't use bombs. They used the dollar. They threatened to sell off U.S. reserves of the British pound, which would have collapsed the British economy. Concurrently, the Soviet Union threatened nuclear strikes. Outmatched financially and diplomatically by its own special partner, Britain was forced into a humiliating withdrawal. Suez went down in history as the definitive proof that Britain could no longer act as an independent superpower. Its empire was functionally over. Act 2. The American Scenario. Now, let's fast forward 70 years. The names have changed, but the geometry is identical. The reigning superpower is the United States, and its primary strategic concern is the Strait of Hormuz. Only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, Hormuz is the world's most critical energy artery. A fifth of the world's oil and LNG passes through here daily. For decades, the implicit promise of American global hegemony has been, "We keep the shipping lanes open." Since the 1979 revolution, the challenger here has been Iran. Iran doesn't need a blue water navy to fight the U.S. They use asymmetric anti-access warfare, mines, missile swarms along a rugged coastline, and hundreds of armed speedboats. The American dilemma is excruciating. If Iran disrupts shipping, the global economy shudders. Oil prices could double overnight, triggering a global recession. But the U.S. military, despite its overmatched technology, cannot guarantee a clean victory. Securing the strait might require a massive land invasion, something a polarized post-war America has zero appetite for. This is where the Suez parallel becomes frighteningly accurate. Just as Britain was forced to rely on American approval, America is now finding that its allies are increasingly reluctant to back its plays in the Gulf. We are seeing key partners exploring direct, independent discussions with Iran to secure their own shipping, effectively bypassing U.S. leadership. The superpower is struggling to command the very alliance that makes it a superpower. Act 3. The pattern of unveiling. This is the pattern. It has 3 distinct stages. Stage 1 is imperial dependency. The empire becomes dependent on a singular choke point that it claims to control, but which is geographically close to a hostile actor. Stage 2 is the bluff. The smaller actor calls the empire's bluff. They prove they can disrupt the lifeline at an acceptable cost to themselves, but an unacceptable cost to the empire. Iran knows it doesn't have to win a war, it just has to inflict enough economic pain that the U.S. gives up. Stage 3 is the unveiling. The empire attempts to resolve the issue by force or threat, only to discover its limits. In Suez, it was financial dependency. In Hormuz, it is the logistical impossibility of securing the coastline and the fracturing of international political will. The most crucial point of rhyme is that a Suez Moment isn't the end of the empire. It is the official declaration of its relative decline. Suez made Washington the unquestioned leader. Hormuz is unveiling that Washington can no longer impose its will solitary, signaling the transition to a multipolar world. Conclusion. We are not arguing that the United States is about to disappear like the British Empire. Its economic and military capacity remains colossal. But we are arguing that the vulnerability in Hormuz is a symptom of a systemic shift. When a superpower cannot secure the global commons it promised to maintain, even against a mid-tier power, the rest of the world takes notice. The pattern is being observed in Beijing and Moscow. It emboldens challengers and forces allies to diversify. Great Britain's story at Suez was about the loss of financial independence. America's potential story in Hormuz is about the loss of military omnipresence. The pattern doesn't predict the date of an empire's end, but it identifies the exact moment the world stops believing in its bluff. Is Hormuz America's Suez? Only history can say for sure, but the rhyme is getting louder. We want to hear from you. Do you agree that Hormuz is America's Suez? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching World Update. Make sure to subscribe to help us keep decoding these patterns. We'll see you next time.